Nick Ashew, Westwood One Sports, bright and early on a Saturday morning. There it is. Now I hear the music. Oh, God, Indiana. What a world we live in. What a world we live in to see Indiana going to the national championship game in college football. What a world. That's all I'll say. Look, this is parody is something that you look at and say, okay, we like it, we love it, but sometimes it can be a little bit too much. All right, I'm on YouTube for the first time ever. I'm literally setting some things up. There's some moving parts here this morning, but it's fine. Things change, things move around, and we'll we'll go with that. You can give me a follow at Nick Ashew on all of the various socials. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and throw a YouTube stream up because I decided, why not? This is the way the world works. It's up, it's running. Check that out. There you go. Yeah, look, finishing up. If you hear this, by the way, this is only the second week I've been up on a Saturday this early. There we go. I've got my rhythm. I'm good. That's gonna be the coffee today. Look, I'm all in it. I'm all in this for Indiana to win this whole damn thing. I really am. We're going to get into, obviously, the NFL playoffs. They start today as well, which thank God, because, it's interesting. When you look at where we are in the NFL news cycle this week, it's all about the coaching cycle, unless maybe you live in an area where it's actually a team that plays in the NFL. I'm in D.C., so my team is not going to be in the playoffs, and it's more about offensive coordinators and head coaches and that coaching cycle. So we'll actually talk real football for a change. So Indiana, Miami is our national championship game in college football. And listen, the one thing I do know, and I'm in DC, so I will preface this. I did a national show for years. I've got a DC show. So it's like there's two different worlds that you live in here. When you're in an area that is not a college football heavy town, market, whatever it is, the focus tends to be on the NFL until the big moments come up in college football. And if you're a football fan, just in general, right? If you're a football fan in general, you at least have some level of interest, I would assume, right? But when you got Indiana and Miami, the national championship game in college football, it's weird. Like, it throws you off because we're so used to, in college football, having one villain, having the Alabamas and the Georgias and Ohio State. This has been totally different. This has been a completely different college football playoff. Now, I'd argue it's good, but it's good to a point, right? First off, like I said before, things got a little wonky here in front of me here. I'm all in for Indiana winning this whole thing because, how can you not? How can you not look at Indiana and see what this program has become? And Curt Cignetti, the head coach, like, this is sports. Really, this is. Think about how many movies have we had made about underdogs, right? So many. Indiana is that underdog story, but I understand they're favorite in this, but this is an underdog story. It's a coach that bet on himself and spent years climbing the coaching ranks and doing everything that he wants to do to become a head coach. And boy, does he love himself. And it's okay. I have no problems with Curt Cignetti being the guy that people look at and say, he's kind of cocky, but he's earned it, right? Hasn't Curt Cignetti earned the right to be cocky? Indiana's unbeaten. They're a touchdown favorite in the national championship game, and it's a basketball school. That's what makes this so much better, is you have taken a program and turned it around, made it a winning program, and you're one win away from a national championship. We are one win away from saying Indiana and college football playoff national champion. That's where we are right now. So how can you not look at Curt Cignetti and this program and this story and this team and just go, wow? If you have you're not a Miami fan, you're not anybody fan, you're just sitting back as somebody like me that, listen, I went to George Mason, and most people know that school that went to the Final Four a million years ago. All right. So I didn't have college football growing up. I've grown up in an NFL market. I've worked in an NFL market. I've covered the NFL. So it's a very different situation. So for me, I can just look at this and kick back and go, this is sports, man. This is it. This is the stuff that we love. Curt Cignetti is 25-2 as Indiana's head coach. Indiana beat Alabama and Oregon in its 2 college football playoff games by a combined score of 94-25. I mean, think about this. It's not like Indiana's just winning games now, which is kind of where the program started off when Curt Cignetti got there. They've been in the college football playoff. I know it's expanded and all that, but they're beating everybody's ass. Like, that's really what this comes down to. They're just crushing everybody in front of them. They're dominating games. And say what you want about Mendoza as an NFL quarterback. He's probably going to be the number 1 overall pick by the Raiders. That's feeling more and more clear at this point. But from a college football quarterback perspective, he's great. I can't unsee, though. There's a meme that's been, it's basically a video, but we turned it into a meme at this point going around. And it basically said that Fernando Mendoza, his responses in interviews sound like ChatGPT wrote them for him. I can't unhear it now. And you probably won't be able to unhear it now either. Because once we get to that point where you start to hear those responses and it sounds very robotic and it's very like coached up and you're just like, okay. So like there's that. But other than that, man, this isn't just like if Indiana, instead of across their, their chest on their jersey, if that said Alabama or that said Georgia, nobody would doubt that they're going to win a national championship. But all the way through this, it's hard to take. I'm not even going to say it's hard to take them seriously because that's not even where I'm. It's more about its fact. It's hard to believe in them until you actually see it because it's a new program. It's not a new program, but it's new for them to be on the national stage as a football program. We're used to Indiana being a basketball school. So it takes time to kind of shake your reputation a little bit, right? But they're 1 win away from that. I will say, though, I'm not looking forward to see Michael Irvin on the sidelines for Miami because they are going to show it constantly. But here we are. I would prefer that not to be the case. But we're going to see it, so get ready. He's got to do it for his YouTube channel, which, by the way, I'm also on my YouTube channel for the first time. I'm just going to take another sip here. I got to get awake on a Saturday. Look, I'm an early morning guy, but this is a little bit earlier. If you're on the West Coast or wherever you are, I know it's even earlier, so I get it. I will say this, though, about parody in college football and parody in general in sports. Parody is great, but it does get to a point where you do need some level of a villain. So whether Miami or Indiana become villains, like if Indiana dominates Miami, wins this national championship, and they're back at it next year, and they look like a team that could win a national championship again next year, and Curt Cignetti's the cocky coach that's like, I win everywhere I go. Google me, which is a great line, by the way. If you start to get that, maybe they become the villain, but it's hard, right? It takes a long time to kind of build that up. But you still need that program in college football that people hate. It brings in the casual fan. It rings that emotional bell. You either love them or you hate them. It just generates more emotion. But, like, there's no hate. Even Miami, it's like Miami hasn't been relevant in years. If they go back to being the U all over again, okay, then that's maybe a different story. But we're not at that point yet. So, it could get to that stage, but they haven't built themselves up that way yet. But I'm all in. I'm all in for Indiana winning this thing. I love it. I hope it happens. This is going to be great. All right, I'm at Nick Ashew on all of the socials, streaming on YouTube here as well, Westwood One Sports. NFL playoff. This is one of my favorite weekends. The next 2 weekends in sports. I know some people like first weekend of March Madness, and that's up there for me. But this weekend, if you were a football fan, especially now when you add in the college football playoff kind of leading into it, you got 2 games today. You're loaded on Sunday. You got a Monday night game. Now, not every game is going to be great. And, I've said this last week on the first show, and this is what I've been saying this for years on any show that I've done, is expand the NFL playoffs. Stop trying to give us another week of regular season football. Just keep in mind that if we did have an expanded NFL regular season, we would be in week 19, and it would be the 18th game for every team in the regular season today. Eventually, that's happening, so get ready. But if you look around these NFL playoffs, just like college, there is a level of parity that's there, but there are at least some teams that you look at that you recognize that have been there before, as opposed to like Miami and Indiana and, Ole Miss and what we had before. Look, the Bills have their best shot to win a Super Bowl, to at least get to a Super Bowl, but they start with their back against the wall. And like the Bills just stand out so much in these playoffs because if you look at their path versus anything in the NFC, let's take the NFC out of this. We'll get to the NFC because it's a very different situation. In the AFC, this is the Bills' best opportunity from an experience perspective and from a path perspective. Yet at the same time, it starts off with their back against the wall. And the reason why I say that is because as much as we look at the Bills and go, yeah, we've seen them there every year, they're 0-5 under Sean McDermott on the road in the playoffs. Josh Allen's 0-4 in playoff games. Now, the last 3 losses they had were in Kansas City, and we got no Chiefs this year, which is the big thing. That's the big obstacle that's out of the way, is the Chiefs are out of the way. But if you are Josh Allen and you're the Bills, the pressure starts to mount, and it gets louder and louder, and the whispers start to become almost yelling. Like, when is it going to get to this point? Now, I'll say this, and I've always said this, Bills fans deserve a Super Bowl. They're the craziest yet nicest people in the world. Really, like, I know so many Bills fans, they're willing to jump through a table, squirt ketchup on somebody, and then come over and give you a hug and say, oh, you're here for the other team? You're a fan of them? It's cool. We're going to give you a hug. We'll welcome you and come over and have some food with us. There's no other fan base like that. Bills fans deserve a Super Bowl. But, like, if you look at where they are now, okay, going up on the road against the Jaguars team that is insanely underrated. They may not be a flashy team, the Jags. They may not be a glamorous team. They may not be a team that would generate that extra level of ratings in the Super Bowl if you're there. And, you know, like the Cowboys would, not that they'll ever get there, the Chiefs or whatever. Like, you don't have that villain aspect with them for the casual fan when you're talking Super Bowl and best matchup and what's going to generate all this interest. But if you look at where the Bills sit, they are not the better team than the Jags. Yet they have so many more expectations and so much pressure, and they're slight favorites on the road. But you can't ignore that pressure because they know they've fallen short year after year after year. And, you know, Josh Allen in those playoff games on the road, it's a problem. So Josh Allen has won at least one playoff game in 5 straight appearances, yet can't win on the road. That's still the longest streak, though, in the history of the NFL by a player without reaching the Super Bowl. Now, I know that's a very wordy, way over the top kind of thing there, but like Josh Allen has had so much success at home, wins playoff games when he's at home, yet still hasn't gone to a Super Bowl. That's what that basically tells you. And look, the Bills defense giving up big runs, big chunk yardage, but the Jags don't run the ball well in terms of, you know, those big chunk yardage plays. So it's like one or the other that's going to happen this weekend. And look, the Jags aren't an easy out. And I know they're not a big TV draw, but they play great football. I've been waiting for Trevor Lawrence to get to the point where he's actually Trevor Lawrence, the Trevor Lawrence that we expected, the Trevor Lawrence we thought he'd be when he came out of Clemson. And, you know, they've got a real offense. They spread things around. Trevor Lawrence is blossoming now. And credit to Liam Coen, credit to their head coach, credit to everything that they've built there. The Jag, you talk about Indiana, right? And not being like, you're not going to be able to shake that reputation yet of basketball school. It's going to take time. Win a national championship, that's going to change a lot. But then the expectation becomes, well, what do you do next? Where are you next? Are you going to do it again? It's the same thing with the Jaguars here, where they're going to have to shake the reputation of, you just got to say the name, right? And the Jags. They got swimming pools in their stadiums or whatever cliches you want to throw out there about them. The Jaguars are like a friend that like kind of finally grew up. Used to be the guy that got drunk and run his mouth at a bar. Wouldn't really do anything, but he just gets drunk and he's just randomly talking to some dude that looked at him the wrong way. It takes time to prove that you're growing up. So if you're the Jaguars right now, you got a better defense. Your offensive line is actually protecting your quarterback. God forbid they could actually protect Trevor Lawrence for a change. You got a balanced attack. You got a legit head coach, at least it looks like in year one. Now, we know we've seen this before where head coaches look great in year one and then you start to question whether or not they can continue and sustain that success, but we're not there yet, obviously. But they've got an edge to them. The Jags have this edge that they just didn't have before. They handle adversity. They didn't handle adversity in the past. They don't just talk tough anymore, right? They're not that friend at the bar, right? Talks, doesn't actually do anything. Although growing up, I guess, you probably don't actually want to start a fight at a bar, so maybe that friend just doesn't do any of that anymore. You get what I'm saying? Like, for right now, they are a legit contender in a wide open AFC. That's where the Jaguars sit right now. in an AFC where the Bills have the most pressure and the highest expectations, being here for so many years, the AFC is so wide open, and the Jags are a team that's kind of been ignored and kind of been forgotten, even with all the conversation about, the Broncos and, of course, the Patriots, because it's the Patriots, and we expect that the Patriots are winning. Everybody expects the Patriots to do it again. Everybody expects the Patriots. They're right back there again. Don't forget about the Jaguars. There's no pressure on them. There's pressure on the Bills, but it's a path that's very, very different. Speaking of the AFC, why you shouldn't have so much confidence in those New England Patriots. I'll explain that next. Nick Ashew, Westwood One Sports. Nick Ashley, Westwood One Sports, also streaming live on YouTube. My very own YouTube channel. Figured I'd just go ahead and throw it up there. Why not? It's the world we live in. I'm so ready for this weekend. Whew. It is one of my favorite weekends in sports. And anybody that's a football fan, I mean, there's no way that whether it's wild card or division round, you just get so much football. And again, it's why I keep saying I would love for the NFL to just expand the playoffs if you're trying to give us more games. And please don't give us an extra week of the regular season because we'd be looking at another regular season game where last week, did you like the slate last week? No, there were like two games that actually really mattered. There was one game that was awesome, obviously, the Ravens-Steelers, last game of the regular season, fantastic. But realistically, these games all matter. Now, don't get me wrong. There are going to be blowouts. I'm going to waste very little time talking about Rams-Panthers. That's the first game today, 4:30 Eastern. And the reason why I say that is because the Panthers are 10.5-point home dogs. It's a historic situation there. And whether you bet or not, it doesn't really matter. The point is that the Panthers are big underdogs for a reason. Now, it's the NFL playoffs. Things could be weird. Stuff goes wrong. The Rams special teams, which has been an issue all year, maybe that's a situation where it throws it off and the Panthers keep that thing close. But what I will say is I think the Rams are going to run away with that game. And there we go. We're done. We've talked about that game. But you know what's going to happen? It still means more than two teams that are eliminated from the playoffs like Browns-Bengals in Week 19. I don't need that. You don't need that. Nobody needs that. But what I will say, beyond just the Bills and the pressure that's on them to win themselves a Super Bowl, not just get to the Super Bowl at this point. Sean McDermott, Josh Allen, and the Bills have got to win a Super Bowl. The AFC is wide open with inexperience, and it's the reason why I look at this being the best path for the Bills. Now, you could say, well, Nick, you just talked about the Jags being a team that's not an easy out, and it's the Bills haven't won a playoff game on the road under Sean McDermott with Josh Allen either. And you know what? You would be right to say that. But here's the reason why I still look at where the Bills are, and I still look at their situation in the entire AFC, and I give them the edge in one specific thing. And this matters. And it's experience. It's experience in the playoffs. It's understanding the pressure. It's understanding the expectations. It's understanding what it's like to get into that routine for the playoffs. Maybe your routine's a little thrown off. Athletes are big creatures of habit. They understand what it's like to get prepared mentally, physically, for all of these things. Now, what comes with the experience also brings expectations that are there. So one advantage that some of these other teams like the Broncos or the Jags or the Patriots, we'll just start with them, they have lower expectations because they haven't been here with these core groups. I know the Patriots have been there 1,000 times, but that's the old Patriots. Tom Brady ain't walking through that door. Bill Belichick ain't walking through that door. And I don't think anybody in New England would want to replace what they've got going on with Drake May and Mike Vrabel anyway, but you understand what I'm saying here. But when you look at the top of the AFC, all right, you got quarterbacks with a ton of inexperience in the playoffs. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has been there. He won a playoff game 3 years ago, but he was horrible. And, go back. It was not a great Trevor Lawrence that you saw from the Jags. Different coach, different era, different everything. Bo Nix has played great football this year. The Broncos, though, are winning games more because of that elite defense. Drake May might win MVP this year, but the Patriots also have one notch below the Broncos and their elite defense. But this game still centers around quarterbacks first. Now, I get it. Defense wins championships. We can throw those cliches out there. And occasionally, yeah, we've had teams go on big runs or win Super Bowls because of their defense. But you still got to have at least good quarterback play. Now, I'm not saying that Bo Nix or Drake May are going to get into the playoffs and completely just throw S at the wall and it's going to be an absolute dumpster fire. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is experience in those situations for young quarterbacks does matter. Now, you can have moments where young quarterbacks have great debuts, and maybe they win a couple of playoff games. It's certainly possible in this. But the bigger issue here is that you do still have that wait and see moment, right? It was wait and see for Indiana this year to get to the college football national championship game, win a national championship. It's wait and see for Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars because Liam Cohen's a first-year coach, and you're going, well, he hasn't done this before. What do we get in the playoffs here? It's the same thing for Bo Nix. It's the same thing for Drake May. It's the same thing for any young quarterback that you want to see what they look like in the regular season and then moving on into the actual postseason. And again, if Bo Nix doesn't play well, and Bo Nix is not at the level of Drake May, but Bo Nix has been a really good quarterback this year. It's impressive what Davis Webb has done as his quarterback's coach, right? Like, if you just get not even great, good quarterback play from Bo Nix, they're in a good spot, all right? But the regular season masks weaknesses at times. And, it's not just for quarterbacks, it's for teams as a whole. And I think that's something to really, really keep in mind here, because a lot of people look at the Patriots and you see so much improvement. Mike Vrabel, if I could say his name, that would be great. Hold on. You know what? Here's what we're going to do real quick. We're going to get a little coffee and we're going to fix that. There we go. We're going to speak words again. You look at Vrabel and you say, all right, this guy's probably going to win Coach of the Year. Heavy favorite, most likely going to be Coach of the Year. And rightfully so. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of coaches that do deserve it this season. But if you look at the Patriots here, the Patriots didn't just have an easy schedule this season. Remember, they were terrible last year. So you're looking at a last place schedule versus a first place schedule that's coming around next year. Ask my Commanders about that. The difference in schedule and the quarterback matchups and all of that. The Patriots schedule is not just easy, okay? Now, here, let me put this caveat on there for you. I'm not one of those people that looks at strength of schedule in April and May and June in the NFL and goes, oh man, it's going to be a tough year. That means very little to me, and it should mean very little to you. Because if you're looking at strength of schedule and what it's basically, it's based on two things. It's based on a team's record last year or their win total or projected wins this coming season. So when we're sitting there in the spring and the summer and talking about strength of schedule for teams, it means almost nothing. But when you look back on a season, you got data, you got real numbers, you got real information, you got real results that are going to tell you whether or not that schedule was tough, what the opponents were like, what those quarterback matchups were, all of those things. The Patriots not only had an easy schedule this year, the New England Patriots had the 10th easiest schedule since the merger in 1970, just ahead of the 72 Dolphins, who, if you remember, took that nice friendly schedule all the way to a perfect season, and we know that they still love to talk about that, and rightfully so. But the New England Patriots had essentially the 10th easiest schedule of all time in this current NFL landscape that we have. Everybody takes it back to the merger and AFL, NFL, and all that. That's how easy this was based on record, based on the teams they saw. Now, that doesn't mean that the Patriots aren't a contender. That doesn't mean that Drake May shouldn't win MVP or Vrabel should win Coach of the Year or any of that stuff. But what I am saying is put it in perspective here. That you can look at the regular season, and you're just winning the games you're supposed to win. Great. Patriots did just that. But the playoffs expose weaknesses, and the playoffs expose frauds, and the playoffs expose paper tigers. And the Patriots now have to prove that what they were able to do in the regular season can translate over to the postseason. And I think that's one of the biggest things to keep in mind with this team. Is it just because you saw this level of dominance at times from the Patriots during the regular season, that doesn't mean that that's going to happen in the playoffs. And look, I understand the Chargers and Justin Herbert have had their own issues, and it's a tough spot for 7 seeds in general anyway. So since the league actually moved to a 14-team playoff a few years ago, expanded the playoffs, good for you, NFL, thank you. 7 seeds have been absolutely destroyed, right? So this is a bad spot for the Chargers against the Patriots anyway. They've gone 1-9. 7 seeds have gone 1-9, losing by almost 11 points a game. So 7 seeds against the 2 seed in the NFL playoffs, it ain't pretty. But that doesn't mean that this Chargers team can't at least take advantage of the lack of competition that the Patriots have seen during the regular season. Patriots also terrible in the red zone too. You know, the Patriots were the 3rd worst team defensively in the red zone, but the Chargers weren't great in the red zone either. So you have some of these matchups here. But like Drake May's got to beat the Chargers downfield, and he's got to, really exploit them. We saw C.J. Stroud do that a couple of weeks ago. If you see that, which Drake May can, by the way, Drake May can absolutely beat this Chargers team downfield and take advantage of that weakness that C.J. Stroud and other quarterbacks have exposed, earlier this year. And that's really going to give the Patriots that advantage here. But, when you're looking at where we are in the AFC as a whole, there's going to be moments here where the defense is going to have to really step up for anybody. step up for any one of these young teams because there's likely going to be mistakes. And like, this isn't even a criticism, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh God, I'm not one of those guys that's going to sit there and be like, well, Drake May, he's a fraud. Even though I'm a Commanders fan and the Commanders passed on him for Jaden Daniels, not going to do that. Not going to be that guy that does that. But I'm just saying, if you're in my boat, yeah, it happens. It becomes a conversation this year. But look, Drake May's the real deal. Bo Nix, I think, has a very, very bright future. And Trevor Lawrence is now finally starting to get to the level that we expected him to get to. The point that we expected to see, oh, this is him. This is that guy. But it's a different animal once you get to these playoffs. Now, there's the coaching aspect of this too. Coach experience certainly matters in the playoffs, but there's only so much that you can do because that's always the counter that I've gotten from people where they're like, well, yeah, what about the coaches that they've got? I had a conversation with somebody about this the other day on another show, and it was like, he was like, the one thing, though, with the lack of experience for quarterbacks is you have coaches in Sean Payton and, Vrabel specifically, and Payton and Vrabel are the two that you look at because Liam Coen, obviously, if you're looking at the AFC at the top there, doesn't have that playoff experience, rookie coach. We get all that. But coach experience only goes so far. Right now, halftime adjustments, making sure that you don't get out-coached, scheming, the way you script early on in the game, those types of things, that helps with a head coach that's been there before. But there's only so much you can do. Like, we put a lot of value on coaches, and there are a lot of things that make coaches very valuable, but you can't force guys to wrap up and tackle properly. You can't, get out there and throw the football accurately for a quarterback. And I know I'm breaking this down and making it very simple and basic, but the reality is that is true. And those are the types of things that you have to think of here, where if a quarterback is making mistakes, if one of these young quarterbacks in the playoffs is making mistakes, you can point those out. But if he ain't throwing the football right, what's that going to do for you? Like, is it really going to matter? And look, Justin Herbert has at least been there before for the Chargers. And it was funny because, Justin Herbert in some ways is kind of where Trevor Lawrence was before. Like, we're hitting that level now for Trevor Lawrence where he's taken that next step. Justin Herbert's been in the playoffs but hasn't had the playoff success. So are we going to see a better Trevor Lawrence? Are we going to see a better Justin Herbert? Like, all of these things kind of come into play with this. Though I would say this, if you're the Chargers, this is your chance to start running the football a little bit more. So the Chargers were not a great red zone team, like I mentioned, during the regular season, but Najee Harris was out half the year for them. Maureen Hampton was out good portion of the season. So if you start seeing the Chargers running the football in that game, they're going to try and take advantage and take some of the pressure off of Trevor Lawrence or off of Justin Herbert. And look, as important as quarterbacks are, you still have to look around and have a more balanced attack, which is one of the things that I do really like about the Jags. It's one of the things the Chargers can now bring to the table with Najee Harris and Amari Hampton out there. And you don't necessarily have to have Justin Herbert throwing the ball 45 times in a game. And Chargers have a strong defense too. So defense and running the football is not completely gone in the NFL. And look, you're talking to somebody here that I love high octane throwing the football first to 40 and give me offense. I'm the same way with the NBA. I'll take it. Now, granted, the NBA is a little crazy. I don't need somebody scoring 150. We have some level of defense. But if I'm sitting there and I'm watching an NFL game, I'm the dude that's going to root for some points. I'm okay with that. But that doesn't mean that you don't run the football in the NFL. It doesn't mean that defense does it. You still need those, especially once you get to playoff football. And when you get to that point, when the weather is colder, depending on what your matchup is, it's later in the season, guys may be a little banged up, or the offense just isn't clicking, throwing the football as much. That's where you got to be able to lean on running the football. Ooh, novel concept, right? Where the defense has to get you stops on the other side. It's a reason why it's hard to win a Super Bowl, right? It's a reason why the Bills have struggled for so long to get there, because it ain't easy. And you've got to have more than just one thing clicking for you. Josh Allen can be as Superman as he wants, but if the Bills can't stop anybody, that's a problem. Or if the Bills can't actually, Josh Allen can do it all himself, but it can't actually convert and get some touchdowns, that's going to be a problem for the Bills, right? We've watched their offense sputter recently. So there's just so many factors that go into all of these things, which is what makes that experience so much more important. But you do still have a defense that can bail you out at moments. So the AFC is as open as it could possibly be. Bills might lose their first game. The Bills might lose to the Jags. The Jaguars aren't flashy. I know the Patriots are getting all the, it's because it's the Patriots. The AFC is as wide open as it could possibly be. On the NFC side of things, though, are the Packers rusty or are they ready? Nick Ashew, Westwood One Sports. Nick Ashew, Westwood One Sports. Indiana heading to the national championship game. Wild card weekend in the NFL. It's good to be a football fan, isn't it? If you're a Packers fan, you got a lot of questions heading into this weekend, though, don't you? Is Jordan Love rusty or ready? Simple question, simple headline, and we don't have the answer until we actually figure it out. That's the late game tonight. Look, again, Rams-Panthers, dude, like it is what it is. Like, good for Panthers fans. I'm glad your team's in the playoffs. You backed in. I'm a Commanders fan, and I watched when they were the football team back into the playoffs, and we watched Taylor Heineke almost beat the Bucs. So anything is possible, but this feels like that could be one of those games where you go, all right, I think I'm going to go do some stuff in the garage, go work outside, and come back and watch the Bears-Packers tonight. Look, Jordan Love's been out since week 16. That was an overtime loss to the Bears, by the way. Had that concussion, and the Packers haven't won a game since week 14. This is where we sit right now. So there's a lot of questions looking at Green Bay heading into this game and this weekend. Now, from an interest perspective, from a rivalry perspective, from a storyline perspective, this is Bears-Packers, y'all. I mean, now they don't talk that way up there, but you get what I'm saying. This is a game that has so much more than just the obvious playoff implications that are there. I mean, this is two organizations that don't like each other. This is there's a history here. There's no more Aaron Rodgers saying that he owns the Bears, and you don't have that. Like, it's a different era with different quarterbacks, but there's a history there. And, we're talking about young quarterbacks and a lack of experience in the playoffs. Give Jordan Love credit. When he debuted in the playoffs back in 2023, man, he was great. Jordan Love's playoff debut was great. Last year, I think he had a quarterback rating of about 41. It was awful. So, look, anything is possible. We don't know what we're going to get from Jordan Love because we haven't seen him play in a few weeks. And this is the tough part with what the Packers have to deal with Love, is that you can get some real high highs with him. But the peaks and valleys, man, it's all over the place because you can be insanely turnover prone if you're Jordan Love, and the Bears defense thrives off of turnovers. Are they going to take advantage of that? Are they going to try to disrupt him early? Are they going to try to make this more complicated for a quarterback that hasn't seen the field in a few weeks? Like, we'll know very early what you're going to get from the Packers offense, right? You'll kind of see in that first quarter, oh, Love looks off, or he looks ready to go. He's in. He's focused. He's ready. He's not rusty at all. I don't know what we're going to get from Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson because this is the first time we've seen them in the playoffs, and this is the first time Ben Johnson's been a head coach, right? So, like, there's a massive question mark there when you're looking at Chicago where you're sitting back going, not to be Kevin Garnett here, but anything is possible, right? Here's the thing about the Bears, because we're looking at the AFC, right, and the lack of experience in the playoffs. The one advantage in the NFC side of things, which I do think the NFC is a lot tighter because you've got teams like the 49ers and the Eagles, despite their offense and the way that it looks. Like, you've got teams in the Rams, and there's a lot of experienced teams in the NFC that make it a little bit harder to, say, like, the Bills have a path, again, not easy. The Bills have a path in the AFC where their experience could benefit them. You're not getting that in the NFC. But I also can't just look at the Bears and say, well, they haven't been here, so it's going to be real tough for them. Because here's the thing about the Chicago Bears. 6 wins after trailing in the final 2 minutes of the fourth quarter. This season, that is the Chicago Bears. That's the most by any team since 1970. I mean, you want to talk about being playoff tested? That is the Chicago Bears. Now, I always use this. Again, I'm in D.C. This is a reference for me. It's easy, but anybody can remember this. When the Washington Nationals won the World Series, yes, they actually won a World Series, in case you forgot, because nobody talks about them or cares about them anymore. It's been a slog with that team. But when they won that World Series back in 2019, they were 19-31 in May. About to fire their manager. There was a series against the Mets where the Nationals was kind of like do or die for the rest of the season. And then everything was playoff mode the rest of the way, and they won a World Series. Now, one of the benefits that a team in any of those situations that's been in high-pressure situations, whether it's back against the wall, sneaking into the playoffs, Eli Manning's Giants that won Super Bowls. Back against the wall, they won 2 Super Bowls as, a team that had to kind of squeak in at the end. Not the same situation as the Panthers. Sorry, Panthers fans. But if you're looking at where the Bears are, the Chicago Bears are a team that may not have playoff experience, but they got pressure experience, don't they? 6 wins after trailing in the final 2 minutes of the fourth quarter this season alone. And we've watched it. We've watched those comebacks. That's a credit to Caleb Williams. That's a credit to Ben Johnson. That's a credit to a culture that's being built there in Chicago that has a level of like mental fortitude, right? That you may not expect because you haven't seen it there before, but you're getting that this year with them. And when the playoffs are a different animal, right? And you're maybe not used to being in those situations. It's the difference between the Patriots situation and Drake May and the 10th easiest schedule in the history of the NFL since the merger. That is a fact. Versus the Bears on the other side of things, where the Bears may not have that playoff experience with this current group or with any group that's been around there recently, but they got high pressure experience. And that translates to the playoffs because games can be closer. They can be more physical. They might be officiated slightly differently. There's a lot of stuff on the line. And, it's every game is a standalone game. Every game has a spotlight on you. And if you're the Bears and the Packers, this Bears-Packers game it means more than just playoffs, which I know sounds crazy because it's like, well, you lose, you go home. And that is true. But when you look at Bears-Packers, there is that rivalry that gets mixed into this as well. And the fact that the Bears can sit here and say, we've been here before. We've done this. We've been in this position. We know what it's like to play tight games. We understand what it's like to have a calm, maybe they're just breathing, right? Maybe there's a little meditation on the side. I don't know what they need to do, but it doesn't matter. Maybe they take a little bit from Phil Jackson. Maybe Ben Johnson's got a little Phil Jackson in him, and he's teaching guys a little meditation, a little zen, a little manifestation. Envision yourself winning this game. Envision yourself throwing that game-winning touchdown, Caleb Williams. I don't know what it's going to be. There's something there, but it's working. And, it's funny because if you look at all these different head coaches, there's a lot of successful head coaches out there this year that could win Coach of the Year. And Ben Johnson deserves to be in that conversation as well. Now, on the other side of things, if you're the Packers and you've got a head coach in the floor that's sitting there going, I've had a lot of expectations for a lot of years and we haven't won anything. We haven't broken through. It's a tough spot, man. It's a tough spot. Pressure is all on Green Bay. And the one advantage that you do have when there is a lack of experience in the playoffs, it usually means you're a young team or you're a team that's taken that next step, whatever the situation is. When you're in that spot, the one thing that you can say is there is low pressure. Look, if the Patriots lose their first playoff game, it's okay, they're young, they'll be back next year. If the Broncos lose their first playoff game, next week, they've got the bye. It's, well, another year of Bo Nix getting better, they'll be back. If the Bills lose, the pressure on them is more than just pressure. It's, do they need to make a coaching change? Do they need to do something else in this offseason that's going to change it? If you're the Packers, it's the same thing. You've been here year after year after year, and you're winning 12, 13 games in the regular season. Not this year, but a lot of times, right, in the past. And you've seen Jordan Love in these really high moments, and then you've seen the real lows. That's when the questions start to come in. That's when it starts to be, should they make a change? So it's not just about Jordan Love. It's about the coaching for Green Bay. Because it's not going to be about the coaching for the Bears. Now, to a point, right? Like, if Ben Johnson just looks completely outmatched as a head coach, there's going to be some questions. But, this is his first year as a head coach. So, I'm just a really big believer in the mental side of sports. And listen, over the years, talking to different, retired athletes or current athletes or whatever. I know, big flex, right? Ooh, look at me. So cool. It is something that does get overlooked a lot, and everybody's got their own method. Everybody's got their own thing. And it becomes something that either works or doesn't work for players. Like, guys are more into meditation and all this stuff, even more and more and trying to avoid the noise. But we live in a world now where it's almost impossible to avoid the noise, right? I can pick up my phone here right now, and there's all kinds of noise about the Packers and everybody else. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, the pressure that can be on these coaches or these quarterbacks that haven't lived up to those expectations year after year after year. That pressure is on Green Bay. That pressure is on the Bills. That pressure is not on the Bears. It's not on this form of the Patriots. It's not on the Broncos. So these are the types of things that are then that's going to be lingering in the offseason. Now, I'm not saying if the Packers lose, you're going to make a coaching change. I'm not saying if the Bills lose, they're going to make a coaching change. Because what I do know for this, too, in Buffalo, they love Sean McDermott. They do. Probably more than LaFleur in Green Bay. But, like, they love Sean McDermott. So now people outside of Buffalo have the conversation about, like, well, should the Bills make a change? Is this going to be different? Bills fans are also like the nicest people on earth. So I feel like you just look at it and go, well, he's gotten us to a point where we're a contender every year. So we want to keep him around. And that's fine. But there's a certain point where this is, I mean, listen, the Ravens just fired John Harbaugh. He'd been there for 18 years. They won a Super Bowl, but they didn't make the playoffs this year and they fell short of expectations. So they said, all right, here's the resume. It's great, but it's done now. We're moving on and we're starting something fresh. Now, there's a little bit of maybe Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh kind of not seeing eye to eye anymore. And what are teams going to do? They always go with the star quarterback. The star quarterback doesn't want the head coach there anymore. It's like stars in the NBA. I don't like this coach. Okay, we'll fire him. No big deal. It's fine. So there is certainly pressure on some of these coaches. No pressure on the Panthers, though. And honestly, no pressure on the Rams. Sean McVay, they ain't losing to the Panthers. I think that's going to, listen, that's going to be a slaughter today. It really is. Unless there is absolute chaos on special teams for the Rams, which has been like their one weakness. Sean McVay had to fire his special teams coordinator. That's it. That's going to be sort of like there's not going to be a lot in that game. So I'm not really too overly concerned. Rams are probably covering that too. They're 10.5-point favorites on the road. That Rams team is good. All right, well, look at the NFC and some of these teams you should have a little more confidence in. And have you ever looked at the difference between offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators? They're giving kids jobs on the offensive side of things, but it's the old guys on the defensive side. Nick Ashew, Westwood One Sports. Nick Ashew, Westwood One Sports. Indiana moving on, Oregon out. We got Miami and Indiana in the college football national championship. Wild card weekend. It's just a great weekend in NFL and just football in general. I do love this weekend in the NFL more than anything. I will say this though, Curt Cignetti may end up becoming the new villain in college football, and I'm all for it. He embraces it. And, it's hard for us to think of Indiana and go like Indiana and villains and put them in the same sentence as Alabama and Georgia. And they haven't earned that yet. I'm not saying they have, but what I will say is they're on that path. When you got a head coach that has and you know what? I'll throw it out there. And I'm saying this as a compliment, by the way, the arrogance that Curt Cignetti has. I love it. I'm all for it. And if Indiana can keep this up, because here's the thing in college football now, too. It's easier for you to build a program faster because you just pay these guys. Really, if you have boosters that got a lot of money and they're like, let me just sit here and I'm just going to write a quick check and let's get ourselves a quarterback here at Indiana or name that program, you can build things up quickly. It's why, honestly, I thought USC would be in a much better spot. That is certainly not worked out, but, you have the ability now in college football. Essentially, it's free agency. So Indiana could end up being a powerhouse in college football. And listen, give Cignetti credit, too. Like, this is a guy that could have had any choice that he wanted for a head coaching job, right? All around the NFL and college football. I mean, it could have been both. And he just said, no, I'm staying here. I'm building my own thing. And I respect coaches that do that. I mean, even Dan Lanning in Oregon, he could have gone to Alabama and he said, nah, I'm staying here. I'm building my own thing. Now, didn't look good last night. Get beat by carry the one attitude. 34, you lose track after a while when it's like, 45-7 at that point. But when you have a head coach that is willing to stay and willing to build a program, because it's not one of those, look, it's tough to be the guy that follows the guy, right? Kalen DeBoer going to Alabama was always going to have the pressure and the expectations to be Nick Saban. Roll damn Tide all the time. And it's like, in reality, nobody's Nick Saban. But if we're getting at least into that period of who's going to be the next Nick Saban in college football, it's Curt Cignetti. Because remember, before Nick Saban got to Alabama, now I understand that they have a past and they've had a football past before Nick Saban was there, but you're going back to Barrett Bryant. You're going back a long time. Indiana's never had that, so I know that it's not an apples-to-apples comparison. But what I will say is Curt Cignetti can be now the new Nick Saban. Recruiting, kind of grumpy, doesn't smile a lot. I mean, Nick Saban doesn't even smile on TV now, but he is really, like, he's fun on TV. I like Nick Saban, the commercials. Like, he's played into the grumpy head coach, but Curt Cignetti doesn't smile. He smiled once, I think, yesterday. I think there was a point where we actually saw a smile from him. But he embraces it. He embraces that role. He embraces the grumpy coach. He embraces the guy that's locked in, and he's winning, and he's building it up. This might be our new Nick Saban, our new villain. And I know it's hard to believe this or think about it now, right? Because you look around and you're just like, it's Indiana. They're a basketball school, but are they? Like, are we at a point now where Indiana becomes a college football program that we watch every year in contention for a national championship? Because you can build programs so much faster now with money. And with a coach that's great at not recruiting, but that's great in the transfer portal. That's great at recruiting guys that have already played college football. And in some ways, that's better. It's like in the NFL. So I always say this about the NFL, right? It's great to have draft picks. It's nice to have all these picks. But if you can't identify talent in the draft that will translate over to the NFL, who cares how many draft picks you have? It's the same thing where you can recruit 17-year-old kids that you think will be good college football players, but that doesn't always translate. If you can go out and essentially what's free agency in college football now, and you get guys that are 19 years old, played a year of college football, went to a team, they thought it was going to work out and it didn't, they want to move, they want to go somewhere else, which the transfer portal now is like out of control, right? 4,000 kids in the transfer portal. But if you can go and do that, you say, all right, like I saw a little bit of you in college football. I like what I saw. You just didn't get the opportunity. Too far down the depth chart. Too much talent in Alabama. Want to come to Indiana? And you can now do that. You raid other teams' programs or other programs' teams. Maybe that's the better way to phrase it. It's a weird world that we've got. It's a weird world we've got in college sports, like overall. Jake on YouTube because I am streaming on YouTube as well, on my personal YouTube channel, Nick Ashew. There you go. If Indiana wins the national championship in 2 weeks, they'll run the Big Ten for years to come, especially with Cignetti being the head coach there for 8 more years. Yeah, listen, we know Jake's right about this too, and I agree with him. It's like if you look at college football, we know guys leave all the time. We saw what Lane Kiffin did, and that's why it's like almost Ole Miss was another team. I was like, if they win, good for them because, Dad left him at Christmas. It's like, all right, guys, I'm done. I got my other family to go to now. See ya. So you couldn't help but like feel bad for Ole Miss and the program and the team. And it's like there's all this, to at least be one of the Final Four teams. I know they don't call it the Final Four, but you get what I mean. To at least have that, you're like, okay, you can't not root for them. But, the 8-year contract that Curt Cignetti signed, I kind of feel like he's going to honor this. Like he feels like the guy that just says, no, I'm here and this is me. And I'm going to be here for the length of the contract that I've signed. And who knows? They could sign him to another extension 3 years in that keeps him there for 15 years. Contracts don't mean much in college football, especially for coaches. And now, obviously, commitments from players don't mean anything with the transfer portal and NIL recruiting guys all over the place and paying them and all that. But Curt Cignetti kind of feels like that guy, doesn't he? He just kind of feels like that guy that looks around and says, I hate what's gone on here. I'm sticking around. Because, listen, there's something to be said for building your own thing, as opposed to latching on to where there's already a lot of history. Because when there's history in a program, you've got to live up to that expectation. Kalen DeBoer's got to live up to Nick Saban's history, and he's never going to. He's never going to be Nick Saban. It's really hard to be the guy that follows the guy. It's a lot easier to be the guy that becomes the guy, right? Like you build your own program. Again, Dan Lanning is another one. I know Oregon looked horrible last night, but Dan Lanning's built something special there too. And you can go down the list and you can look at some other coaches that have certainly done that, but Curt Cignetti could have gone anywhere and he decided he's going to stay where he was and build something up in Indiana. And there's something to be said. There's something to be said for that. I love seeing it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not the guy that's like, well, back in Michael Jordan's day, guys stayed in the NBA on one team forever and nobody ever changed. Okay, the era is different. Things have changed. Like, we got to move on from that. People don't stay at a job for 40 years, retire, and get a gold watch. The world doesn't work that way. People build YouTube channels and build their own businesses a lot more than they were before. Like, when the world changes, you do have to adapt. But that doesn't mean that every situation is that way. And I think Indiana is going to be a powerhouse for a long, long time. And it might not be long before we're talking about them being the villains. They got to beat Miami first. I get that, but I think they do win, and I think they win not only the national championship, but more to come because the exposure. And now it's like kids 3 years ago even, right? You may be a 5-star recruit at quarterback. You may not have thought of Indiana when you were a freshman in high school, but you might be thinking about going to play for Indiana now. And that's the difference. And Curt Cignetti, we might have our new Nick Saban. And I love it. Give me some grumpy old coaches. It's fun. I'll take it. And listen, the coaching carousel is always going to be chaotic in any sport. I mean, it's the same way in the NFL. John Harbaugh controls the entire coaching cycle that we've got going on in the NFL now. And it's interesting, too. So, again, indeed, look, the Commanders last night, I'm only referencing the Commanders. I know you don't care, but just bear with me on this. The only reason I reference the Commanders is because last night told us something, all right? So they basically hired their quarterback's coach to be their offensive coordinator. We all thought in D.C., Mike McDaniel, once he got fired in Miami, he was the perfect fit. He's been in the Commanders, Redskins football team organization before, kind of thought he was going to be the offensive coordinator. He became available. Shockingly, in Miami, once John Harbaugh was suddenly on the market, and we know the ties with the Harbaugh family, Stephen Ross, the owner, and with the Dolphins, and all of those things. But you look around and go, okay, you have to start to read into some of these signs when you're looking at these coaches and where they're going to end up, because it's just as big in the NFL as it is the transfer portal, just not as many people involved is in college football. John Harbaugh, it just feels like to me, Giants, Dolphins, those are the two. Now, if I had to pick a favorite, now there actually are odds for this. If anybody dabbles, the Giants are heavy favorites for this. John Harbaugh to the Giants, it kind of feels like the match that's going to make sense because the Giants are going to go hard after him. The Dolphins don't, like, if you're looking at situations, because this is the thing too, if you're somebody that has choices in life, you're thinking about the whole picture, quality of life, where you're going to live, what does your family want? And then, the actual job and the people you work with. Is there good leadership? Is there bad leadership? What's the future of that place you're going to go work? And if you're John Harbaugh, the one advantage the Giants do have is that they've got a young quarterback that has a lot of upside, and Jackson Dart. You got to teach him how to slide and stop being so cocky and thinking that he can just take hits. Like these young quarterbacks that think they can lower the throwing shoulder, be like, yeah, I'll take a hit. I'm tough. It doesn't work out. Don't do it. But you've got a lot of big personalities there, which could be good or bad, depending on Harbaugh may not care about that as much, but like there are a lot of talented young guys on that Giants roster on both sides of the football. The offensive line's a mess, but Cam Scadaboo, once he's healthy again, he's a ton of fun to watch. A lot of fun watching on YouTube too. But they got a great pass rush in New York. And the expectations are so low with the Giants because of how bad that organization's been for so long that they're going to be willing to spend. And John Harbaugh can make the Giants relevant again, which means they're willing to back up that truck full of money for him. Now, that doesn't mean the Dolphins won't do the same thing. But if I'm John Harbaugh and I'm looking at coaching openings right now, the Giants, the Browns, or the Falcons, or the Raiders, or the reason why I go to the Giants is because you have a ownership group that I'm going to assume this, fine, that you assume is sick of losing, that you assume wants to make a big splash, that you assume now wants stability. So you're going to get paid. They're going to be willing to spend in free agency. And listen, in free agency with the Giants, like that's a big market. Guys will want to go there, especially when there's a young quarterback. In quarterback situation, if you have the choice as a head coach in the NFL, you've got to weigh that as a major option. And I would right now be more willing to coach Jackson Dart than Tua Tagovailoa, who just got benched and has dealt with multiple concussions, though I know Jackson Dart has dealt with some too. There's a little bit more in terms of habits that you can build with a younger quarterback in Jackson Dart, where Tua is kind of who he is now at this point. And listen, I hope Tua is healthy. Hope he doesn't deal with concussions the rest of his career and has a long NFL career. But that being said, if he goes to a team like the Dolphins, there's a lot more questions there, right? Is Tyreek Hill going to still be around? Is he really even the same Tyreek Hill anymore? Constantly dealing with injuries. Do they want to move on from Jalen Waddle? Do you like again, and there's a million things that you go down, but the quarterback is the biggest thing there. You could argue that if you're John Harbaugh and you look at the Falcons, what's that quarterback situation? Is Michael Penix Jr. somebody that's got a higher upside than Jackson Dart? It always comes back to the quarterback in the NFL. And I know people get sick of it, but like that's the reality. That's where the NFL is. It's so pass heavy and so offensive, offensively dominant in terms of just the focus of teams and the way the rules are too. But you've got to pay attention to what the quarterback situation is. And yeah, the Raiders have the number 1 overall pick, but I'd take Jackson Dart over Fernando Mendoza any day. I mean, there's the Titans, there's the Cardinals. Do those really entice you if you're John Harbaugh? And I don't think he sits out a year. It sounds like, according to these reports, like he was waiting till this week coming up to start doing interviews, but like he knows it. He can sit back and relax. Just go, all right, see you guys in a week. I'm going to take a week off and then we'll start talking again. Like that's who Jackson, or that's who John Harbaugh pretty much is. He knows he's got control over the situation, and he knows that if he tells the Dolphins, I want the job, but you got to pay me X amount of dollars, they're going to do it. And the Dolphins are in that similar situation. Pine Needle on YouTube points out, it's a great name, by the way. Harbaugh wanted to pick his own GM, and the Dolphins just hired that. Yeah, so that's true. And that may almost take the Dolphins out of the running. If you're John Harbaugh, you have all of the leverage in the world here. If you're looking at where you're going to go, because the interviews are going to start really this week. And again, let's not act like conversations haven't been happening behind the scenes. They've happened behind the scenes already. His representation has talked to teams, and you've gone down that list. And he'll probably take meetings with some of these other organizations, like maybe the Titans, just for the hell of it. Probably not. Maybe more like the Falcons. You throw them out there. They're working on their front office now. Matt Ryan's probably going to be the president, not football operations, president of football. They changed the title a little bit. Look, if Harbaugh goes to the NFC East, the NFC East, kids, well, I say that too, like I'm 50 years old. I don't remember these days, but the NFC East used to be competitive top to bottom. It did. It was the premier division for a long time in football. And I know everybody makes fun of the Cowboys if you're not a Cowboys fan, and Brian Schottenheimer is the, he was kind of their safety net coach. Like, nobody else wants this job, we'll hire him. But you still look at the NFC East and go, all 4 teams have some semblance of a future at quarterback. Say what you want about Jalen Hurts, but Jalen Hurts with a better offensive coordinator can be certainly a better quarterback. He might be the fourth best quarterback in that division, but every team has at least an idea, if not for sure, their franchise quarterback. And if you start bringing the Giants in there and they're more stable, with the Commanders looking to really add a lot this offseason, and they've got, as long as it's a healthy Jaden Daniels, and you get back to what we saw last year from him, you put the Commanders back in the conversation of at least playoff team. The Eagles are always going to be there with Howie Roseman. That's always going to be an aggressive organization with everything that they do. I mean, top to bottom, the NFC East, if you add the Giants to an aggressive, relevant organization list, there's a chance that the NFC East becomes the most competitive and the best division in football again. Now, I'm not saying right on to next year, but this could be a situation where in the next couple of seasons, you have a division that's competitive with organizations that are willing to spend more money in free agency and be more aggressive because they're all competing with each other. Like, it's not just, hey, we got to build a team that's going to be a playoff team. It's, hey, we got to build a team that can actually compete just in the division first. Like, that's where it starts. And the Eagles are still the cream of the crop in the NFC East. Despite what happened offensively, they are very strong defensively, and they've got an aggressive general manager. They're going to have to deal with some stuff this offseason. But it's going to be a team that's always going to be in the conversation in the NFC East, at least for the next few seasons. And you got the Giants on the rise. You got the Commanders on the rise, despite what you saw this year. Trust me, they're going to be aggressive this offseason. And the Cowboys, look, Dak, at least in the regular season, is a great regular season quarterback. So I know the Cowboys will flame out in the postseason. We guarantee that, but that's, there's a lot of potential there for all of these teams. And Harbaugh might be the last missing piece. If he goes to the Giants, which they are the heavy favorite to be his next team that he coaches, it makes the NFC East that much more competitive. Speaking of coaches, we got a lot of options that actually deserve to win Coach of the Year. So we got to stop talking about one name. I'll explain that next. Nick Ashew, Westwood One Sports. Nick Ashew, Westwood One Sports. Mike Vrabel, heavy favorite to win Coach of the Year. But I'll tell you what, I don't think he's the only one should be in the conversation. I get it. It helps when you're the Patriots and you're returning to glory. We also had the 10th easiest schedule in the history of the NFL since the merger. Just saying, it's a thing. Mike Macdonald in Seattle, somebody that should get heavy consideration there. Liam Coen with the Jags. I mean, even Kyle Shanahan and all those injuries you've had in San Francisco. Look, you're looking at a lot of teams this weekend. Yeah, the NFL is as wide open as it's really been in a long, long time. We had parity in the college football playoff, and we certainly have it in the NFL as well. Now, it's different. I understand that. But, when you're looking at so many teams that have had these big jumps this year, we can't just sit here. Listen, you can't even say that, like, Sean Payton should be in the conversation, too, with what he's done in Denver. There's a lot of really good coaches in the NFL, and I think sometimes it gets overlooked. And again, listen, myself included, right? I've spent how much time talking about quarterbacks? Because that's still what moves the needle, and that's still the most important position in sports, not just the NFL, not just in football, but in sports. That is the most important position. But good coaching makes a difference in the NFL. People kind of downgrade what a manager does in baseball or, in the NBA. It's like, just roll the ball in the court and let the stars play, which, by the way, is a lazy narrative, but it does exist. But if you're looking at the NFL, man, like, good coaching makes all the difference in the world. The jump from last year to this year for the Jags and for Trevor Lawrence specifically with Liam Coen, I mean, you see the difference. It's a massive, massive difference in that, right? Mike Macdonald and what he's done in Seattle now. And, again, I understand, right? I understand Mike Vrabel and what he's been able to do and turning things around so quickly in New England. There's a lot of guys that deserve credit for this year, and I think that's what's going to make the playoffs so interesting too, where, you've got some of these coaches that have playoff experience, but their team's a little bit younger, and a Sean Payton in Denver and Mike Vrabel in New England, and, then there's the other side of things. That's why I mentioned Kyle Shanahan. Look, here's what I'll say about Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers, is that every year, other than we have 1 year where injuries truly decimated this team, they're always in at least the playoff hunt every year since Kyle Shanahan went through the first couple of years of the rebuild. Because you kind of got to, take out the first 2 years or so of a team sometimes when you're gutting that thing down to the studs. Although there is this conspiracy theory going around, and I'm on YouTube too, streaming, so I'll put on my tinfoil hat real quick for this, for anybody that's watching on my YouTube channel. There is a conspiracy theory going around with the 49ers that the big, electrical thing that's, I don't know what it's called, whatever, that's next to their practice facility in their stadium is, injuring players. I'll let you find that yourself, and I'll take this off. I don't want to mess my hair up too much here. I did it this morning at 5 a.m. or whatever it was here on the East Coast. But the 49ers have dealt with a lot of injuries, and yet they still find themselves, by the way, really watch the video. It's actually going to make you go, oh, there's some science behind it. I'm not a conspiracy theory guy necessarily, but sometimes there are things to look at. But look, the 49ers every year find ways, and Kyle Shanahan finds ways to keep this team relevant and keep this team in contention. Now, it's not just Kyle Shanahan, though, right? You've got a front office that's built up some depth. They found a level of talent that helps when it's next man up. We love that expression in football, right? Next man up. Oh, yeah. Well, you got to have depth for next man up. You can't just sit here and expect the guy that's third on your depth chart to be as good as your starter. Sometimes it works out and you find somebody, oh, wow, he's better than what we thought. Then there's other times where you go, oh, this ain't going to work. And, 49ers-Eagles is probably one of the most intriguing games this weekend. And it's tough to gauge in some ways because we know what the Eagles are defensively. The 49ers are banged up a little offensively. But yet at the same time, both of these teams, tremendous playoff experience, a lot of talent that's out there. And coaches that have certainly been there. Say what you want about Nick Sirianni, but he won a Super Bowl. I know he's a troll. He's obnoxious. He's annoying as hell. And even Eagles fans are sick of him, but he does win. But, no offense is playing better than the 49ers. Nobody. Nothing. They have been as good as any team offensively since Brock Purdy came back. And listen, even when Mac Jones was out there at quarterback, they were sustaining this level of success that they needed, which is another testament to Kyle Shanahan. That Shanahan coaching tree, when I say Shanahan, I don't mean Kyle. I mean Mike Shanahan. That Mike Shanahan coaching tree and the trickle-down effect that it's had in the NFL, it may go down as the best coaching tree that we've ever had when it's all said and done because it continues to grow more and more branches. Nature keeps sprouting Or as Nick Sirianni would say, you water the plant and then it grows, whatever that analogy was years ago. That was before we realized he actually was a decent head coach. But listen, since Brock Purdy returned from that toe injury that he had, that was week 11, all right? The 49ers are averaging 30 points a game. That's 4th in the NFL. And take out last week, right? You had no George Kittle, no Trent Williams, which, by the way, is still an issue for them. But if they can have those guys be relatively healthy, that 49ers offense against that Eagles defense, it's one of the best matchups this weekend. And we got to be honest with ourselves here, too. I'm not going to put all the credit on Kyle Shanahan because there have been some mistakes within that organization, right? I mean, the front office is a big part of this because there's the questions and the reports and the whispers, if you will, about whether or not, everybody was on board for some of the quarterbacks that have been a part of this roster before Brock Purdy. Like Trey Lance, trading up for Trey Lance. Kyle Shanahan reportedly didn't really want that. Brock Purdy bailed out the 49ers staff, 49ers front office, everybody. Like, he really did. They've had multiple failed starters. Now, I'm not talking about the early days of, like, Nick Mullins and C.J. Beathard. Like, those guys were bridge quarterbacks. They made it work. You got the best you could out of them. But, man, when you look at all of the failed starters from a Jimmy Garoppolo to trading up for Trey Lance, and Trey Lance was far worse than Jimmy Garoppolo, at least the 49ers had playoff success with Jimmy Garoppolo starting. Now, whether he was the reason or not, that's another conversation, and I can tell you very easily he a lot of times wasn't. It was more about that defense. But when you look at what they've endured to then have Brock Purdy be the last pick in the draft and now end up as their franchise quarterback. He falls into their lap. Now, granted, they identified the talent and said, this kid could be pretty good. Do I think if we gave them truth serum in San Francisco that they would look and say, yeah, we really thought this was going to be Brock Purdy? I doubt that. Let's remember, Brock Purdy only got a start because 2 other quarterbacks in Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance got hurt. So this was just one of those great stories. Disney will probably make a movie out of it one day, and we can all look back on it and go, I remember Brock Purdy when he first started off. They're playing at an elite level. He's playing at an elite level. And he has proven that he's a franchise quarterback. Like, we're past that conversation now. Now, if you want to argue whether Purdy's a guy that's been helped with talent around him, okay. Like, how many quarterbacks really in the NFL can we look at and say, they elevate everybody around him? It doesn't matter who's on that offense. They make everybody better. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, I don't care about what happened this season. Patrick Mahomes elevates everybody around him. We see the lack of talent he's had at wide receiver. So it's there. There's very few quarterbacks that can do that. Lamar Jackson at his peak, when they've had, a lower level of talent at wide receiver, I'd put Lamar in that conversation as well. Like, there's very few that you just say, give him anybody. Tom Brady did that. Like, there's very few that actually do that. So I'm not going to hold that against Brock Purdy and be like, well, he's got talent around him. Okay. I mean, he's barely had Brandon Ayuk. He's always been in the doghouse before signing that contract. And then now he's driving past the stadium, making videos, clearly showing he doesn't want to be there anymore. Right? Brock Purdy has been the savior for everybody in that 49ers organization. He's even gotten a little cocky, too. You notice that? The dancing, like, there's a level of, and it's like not even fair to say arrogance, right? But there's this level of just this, it's beyond confidence now with Brock Purdy. And I love that, right? You want your quarterback to have a high level of confidence. Now, you don't want them to be overconfident and think that they're Superman like Jackson Dart, where they're just, I'll just take this hit. Everything's going to be fine. Hey, dude, you should probably be careful because you're getting concussions. We want a level of, like, smart confidence. There's a balance. There's cocky. There's confidence. And there's a very, very thin line between that. And if you can straddle that line, you're in good shape. But the coaching and the roster and the talent all around him does help. And I'm not going to say that hasn't helped Brock Purdy, but he's also helped Kyle Shanahan and the rest of that 49ers coaching staff and that offense, which really down the road, if you think about it, may end up being the similar conversation to Tom Brady. Where is it like, did Tom Brady help Bill Belichick or did Bill Belichick help Tom Brady? And yes, Tom Brady won a Super Bowl without Belichick, but he did have a lot of talent in Tampa, and Bill Belichick had a far inferior roster in New England. And that can be, we'll never truly have an answer for that other than, here's a thought. Maybe they actually both helped each other. And it's the same thing here where maybe Kyle Shanahan and maybe Brock Purdy just helped each other. It was a great match and it was a perfect fit. Really. And that's, oh, by the way, so I'm looking at YouTube comments here too. So apparently that is a big story, the electrical grid that's next to the stadium for the 49ers. The story kind of died down according to Pine Needle here. Is it Pine? I love that. I love that you call it your YouTube handle is Pine Needle. But apparently it's been a thing actually for a while. So maybe that's why the 49ers are getting hurt, because there's an electrical grid that's, I mean, I can get into the nerdiness of it and the sports science behind it. I'm kind of into that stuff, but you don't care, so I won't. But there's actually something to be said for it. And I'm actually not saying that it's a conspiracy theory. I just wanted to put the tinfoil hat on my head because, well, it's fun, and that's the case. But yeah, look, I mean, if you look at the NFC overall, too, you've got the Rams, you've got the 49ers, you've got the Eagles. These are teams that are experienced. These are teams that have playoff wins and no Super Bowl wins for the 49ers, but the Eagles and Rams have been there. They've won. The 49ers have been there. They've got a coaching staff that's been there. They got, and we could argue that, I mean, who knows? If Brock Purdy hadn't gotten hurt in that playoff game a couple of years ago, where he literally couldn't throw the football and they had nobody that could throw the football for them, 49ers could have won a Super Bowl then. So we could be talking about 3 teams in the NFC that have won Super Bowls with the general construction of what they've got there, right? Like, not everybody, they've got some. And, if you're looking at 49ers, Eagles, that's a game that's also going to come down to the coordinators. And I think at times, as much as we love the concept of how important quarterbacks are and head coaches and they are, there's also the level of coordinators have become more important than they've ever been in the NFL before. And it's really interesting if you look, right? Because I mentioned the Commanders. They just hired a 30-year-old offensive coordinator who was literally a quarterback a couple of years ago in the NFL. He's 30. And you see how young offensive coordinators have gotten. And it's totally different on both sides, right? And I think that's something to just keep in mind, where, like, defensive coordinators kind of have to, like, age like a fine wine or like a great bourbon. But offensive coordinators, you want to hire them young. Offensive coordinators are the tech bros. Defensive coordinators have kind of just become like the doctors, right? They get better with age. They learn more. They have more experience. If you look, when teams hire offensive coordinators right now, they want upside and scheme innovation and quarterback development and sort of a freshness when it comes to play calling. And if look around the league right now at offensive coordinators in the NFL. You got the Kubiaks, they're pretty young. And you go down the list. The average age, essentially, if you're looking, you got guys in their 30s, you got guys in their early 40s. Very few 50-year-old plus offensive coordinators. They're mostly retreads. They've had multiple situations like a Greg Roman or whoever, where they've kind of bounced around a little bit. The offensive coordinator pipeline is more of a youth movement, and under 40 is not weird anymore in the NFL. It's actually become a requirement. But if you look on the defensive side, I looked this up. Like, I actually took the time, because I'm a psychopath, and actually went and looked this up. If you look at defensive coordinators, that's where all the veterans are, right? Defensive coordinators age and get better over time, right? Experience, there's adjustments, the install mastery. They've seen everything, staff leadership. It becomes, the situational awareness and like having been there for so long, that matters more for a defensive coordinator. Teams want someone that's kind of seen all the different coverages and understands and still comfortable and fine and relaxed, like handles it. It's like defenses are less flashy and it's more fundamental, and it's still relatively simple compared to the complex offenses that they want in the NFL. There's very few under 40 defensive coordinators. If you look at 50 plus, there's a ton. Even go back. So look at this. All right, I'll give you names real quick here. Vic Fangio, Eagles defensive coordinator. We're going to see him against the 49ers. He's in his mid-60s. Steve Spagnuolo, another one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL, mid-60s. Todd Bowles, I know he's a head coach now, but he's been a defensive coordinator, like a defensive coach, early 60s. Like Jim Schwartz, like these are some of these names you go down and look and you're like, oh, great defensive minds tend to get in a spot where they're hired, I don't even want to say later, but you're getting offensive coordinators hired faster, promoted faster, getting head coaching jobs sooner, while you want more stability from your defensive coordinator. Their recycled opportunities aren't as bad. It's kind of seen as like experience versus like, well, your offense didn't work. You almost respected with age a little bit more. Offensive coordinators, it's like the hot new chef that they hire at a restaurant. Defensive coordinators are those pit masters. They've been around doing the same thing, smoking their brisket for 50 years, and that's where you go for brisket. He's got the experience. He's got it all right there. It's a very big difference between the two. And I didn't really notice it until I started looking, and I went, wait a second. Oh my gosh. The difference between offensive coordinator average age and defensive coordinator keeps getting drastically different. It's unbelievable. So you want age. And Vic Fangio, one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. And that 49ers offense, one of the best offenses in the NFL. So we're going to see that matchup this weekend. I mean, the Eagles defense has been, they're fifth in scoring, 19 points a game allowed, seventh in passing defense. And they've seen, that Eagles defense has seen Josh Allen, Matt Stafford, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. So it's not like the Patriots schedule where it's the 10th easiest in the history of the NFL since the merger. And you're like, well, they were great in the regular season, but are they paper tigers? No, the Eagles defense has seen competition and we've gotten those results. All right. Could we be seeing Aaron Rodgers' last game in the NFL on Monday? Nick Ashew, Westwood One Sports. Nick Ashley, Westwood One Sports. We now have what is reportedly the contract demands and the general demands for John Harbaugh and his next head coaching gig. According to ESPN Cleveland's Tony Grossi, Harbaugh is searching for a salary of $20 million a year with a $10 million assistant coach budget and, quote, total authority over the roster. He'd also like to select his own GM. Wouldn't that be nice to be able to pick your own boss and everybody else around you? Look, he wants his own personnel guy. He's, quote, very interested in the Giants, according to Ian O'Connor. Apparently, the Browns are a team he's interested in, too. I don't know why you'd want to do that because, well, the Browns ruin everything they touch, and I don't know what the hell that quarterback situation looks like, but here we are. John Harbaugh controls the entire coaching market right now in the NFL. Everybody sits, everybody waits, and they want to see what he does. And we've seen this in other sports. We've seen this in, the NBA, where you're looking at NBA free agency, and it's like, well, let's first off and see where Kevin Durant goes this year, and then everything else kind of falls into place after that. Here's the thing. John Harbaugh was in Baltimore for 18 years. At some point, your voice just starts to ring hollow, and it's not even necessarily a criticism of him as a head coach. It's just the reality. Like, this stuff kind of happens every once in a while. And when you look at what he's done and the consistency that the Ravens have had as an organization year after year after year, most organizations would take that. Like, sometimes you may have a higher floor but a lower ceiling. When a coach has been there too long, the Steelers are another one. And that's what made that game last week with the Ravens and Steelers just so intriguing beyond just win and get into the playoffs. It was also the coaches that were in similar positions, and not the quarterback position, but, like similar positions overall, where they've been there forever. And you know that you're going to get a level of consistency, but the ceiling kind of felt like it wasn't as high. And there were playoff losses and flame outs where you went, oh my, is this just going to be what it is? But I can tell you from the outside looking in, Steelers fans and Ravens fans, the alternative sucks. When you got a low floor, when you're trying somebody new and you're like, well, we'll see where this goes. It can be a lot worse. The grass ain't always greener on the other side. And this is going to be an interesting spot for the Ravens this offseason. They interviewed Kevin Stefanski, which would be funny if John Harbaugh goes to Cleveland and Kevin Stefanski goes to Baltimore. I would hire Kevin Stefanski in 2 seconds if I'm the Ravens. Offensive-minded head coach, 2-time coach of the year. Oh, and has also made the Browns relevant with the absolute S-storm that they've had there. I don't know why anybody would want that Browns job. You're still stuck with Deshaun Watson somehow for like another year, and that awful contract. But man, when you look at where Harbaugh is now, he has all the control in the world. And I don't blame him for trying to take that control. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you take advantage of that opportunity if you're John Harbaugh and ask for $20 million a year? Which, by the way, like I said earlier in the show, before this came out, this just dropped. John Harbaugh is going to get paid a lot of money, and the Giants are desperate. They want relevancy. They want to win in an NFC East that's going to get more competitive. And if I'm the Giants, I am telling John Harbaugh, here's part ownership. I don't think you actually can have it, but I would just try and skirt around the rules like you're the Clippers and just say, here's more money some other way. Give him whatever he wants. Now, as a Commanders fan, I don't want to see that, but that's a whole other conversation. This is what you need to do if you're the Giants. This is your shot. This is your chance. Because if the Eagles continue to trend in the direction they are, even with the drama that's almost a guarantee this offseason with probably A.J. Brown wanting out and, offensive coordinator situation in Philadelphia, whatever, the Eagles are always going to still be relevant with Howie Roseman as their GM. The Commanders are going to be aggressive this offseason, and the Cowboys will probably re-sign George Pickens at least and have a fun offense during the regular season and still be a relevant regular season team. So if you're the Giants, even though there are tiers to that NFC East, there is potential that you could be the fourth team for multiple seasons moving forward if you don't get this right now. It's massively important for them. And that's the reason why when I look at John Harbaugh wanting $20 million a year, if I'm the Giants, I go, all right, I'm going to sign that check for you now, buddy. How about we make it $21 million just to lock this thing up and make it safe? Oh, you want to pick your boss? Cool, go ahead and do it. We could start interviews right now if you want. Anybody. Do you just want, like, my mom? My mom could be your boss. That's fine. We'll do that. Like, it doesn't matter. Because if you're the Giants, you need this relevancy. And the Ravens had it for 18 years. And you know what the floor is with John Harbaugh as the head coach. Now, again, floor is not ceiling, right? Or what did Michael Jordan say? The ceiling is, I don't even know what the quote was, but that came dangerously close to sounding like Michael Jordan, that one speech. But If you're the Giants, right now you'd kill to be the Ravens organization and that consistency that they've had. Now, it's not just head coach. There is front office that matters and ownership and a lot of that. And the ownership is top-notch in Baltimore and ain't in with the Giants. Dysfunctional with both New York teams, actually. But looking at where you are now, you just do whatever you can. You do whatever you can. And there's a reason why Mike Tomlin has stayed in Pittsburgh for so long. You know you're a playoff team, or at least in playoff contention every single year. Right? We talk about Tomlin's teams finishing, well, it was 500 when you could finish 500. Another reason why I hate the 17-game schedule. Absolutely the worst. Finishing 500 is ceremonial, okay? And we've taken that out of the game for now until they add an 18th game. But Mike Tomlin has been in Pittsburgh for so long because there is a level of consistency. And listen, I would argue, too, that if you're the Steelers right now, how can you evaluate what Mike Tomlin can be as a head coach at this point in the NFL when he hasn't had a quarterback since you got rid of, or I guess got away from, the ghost of Ben Roethlisberger? Because when Ben Roethlisberger dropped off, he dropped off. It was bad. And they haven't had a quarterback since. And yeah, Aaron Rodgers is an upgrade from what they've had post Ben Roethlisberger, but this isn't peak Aaron Rodgers anymore. And there's a chance this is his last game. There's a chance that this is Aaron Rodgers' last game against the Texans if the Texans win. And by the way, the Texans are my dark horse team in the AFC. I'd even argue in the entire NFL playoffs. The Texans have a high ceiling and an AFC, again, that's completely wide open. The Bills could get knocked out of the playoffs this weekend, and then you've got the Jags and a bunch of inexperienced teams for the most part in the AFC. And I know the Texans fall into that category, but we talk about elite defenses in Denver and New England. Houston's in that mix too. You got some really, really, really good defenses in the AFC playoffs. Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. alone, that's 30 sacks almost between those two combined in the regular season. That is an astronomical number. That is a massive pass rush that they've got. Now, I know the Steelers' offense and Aaron Rodgers, they're getting that thing out. 2.65 seconds. It's get that thing out real quick. You better do that Monday because this Texans defense is going after Aaron Rodgers early. And look, Aaron Rodgers has been better than he was with the Jets, but the first year he didn't play. And then he's coming back from a torn Achilles, and you started to see a better Aaron Rodgers over like that 7 or 8 game stretch at the end of the regular season with the Jets last year. But it's the Jets. The Jets ruin everything, all right? Anything the Jets touch that might be good, they ruin. So inevitably, it wasn't going to work out with Aaron Rodgers and that ego. And you walked in that organization looking around going, look at my resume and look at you guys. I don't care that I've had playoff failures. You guys even know how to spell playoffs with the Jets? You don't. So that was never going to work. It was never going to be a thing. But, Aaron Rodgers is certainly a better quarterback now than what we had then. But this Texans defense, absolutely elite. And if you're Aaron Rodgers and that Steelers offense, you got to get rid of that ball quick. You got to hope that the run game in place is going to work. Like, I really like the Texans, man. The more and more I think about this team, if CJ Stroud can just be in a position where he's comfortable, right? If he can just be in a position where he's not losing them games. Because, again, there is a level of inexperience that's there, but that's how defense picks up the slack. And that's what's really going to help all of these inexperienced teams in the AFC side of things, is the Broncos have an elite defense. The Patriots have that. And the Texans have that. That really helps. And again, the Jags have a very good defense. I wouldn't put them on the level of, where Denver is, but I would certainly say that the Jags have a very good defense now. That's been an issue for years for them. So it's what makes the AFC playoffs that much more just intriguing, right? You look and you're like, oh, geez, there's a lot to be said for all of these teams that have a defense they can lean on if their young quarterbacks aren't picking up the slack enough. If CJ Stroud can just be good CJ Stroud, not elite, not great, just good. But that Texans defense is at their highest level. That's a dark horse team in the AFC. And honestly, it's a dark horse team in the entire playoffs. They have that ability. They really do. Houston's secondary too. Like, let's not just talk about, it's not just about Houston when we're talking about that pass rush. They're secondary. A lot of turnovers. They minimize yak. Everybody loves yak. A lot of 3-and-outs, I think, for the Steelers. It's not a betting show, but I will say, Steelers team total under, especially in the first half, I'd maybe dabble in that. Yeah. These NFL playoffs, man. And look, we could get a wild. The worst Super Bowl matchup we could have from like an intrigue perspective or ratings perspective would involve the Panthers, but they ain't going to get there. So, like, other than that, I mean, I'm excited to watch all these teams, but I know that like the Jags might not move the needle for a lot of casual NFL fans if they're in the Super Bowl, but that's just because you're not watching the Jags. They're a really good team. So cannot wait. Even listen, even Rams, Panthers, give me it. Injected into my veins today. I love it. Cannot wait. Bears, Packers tonight. Oh, cannot wait for this. This is one of my favorite weekends in the entire sports calendar year, this week and next week. March Madness is great, but come on, we love football first. All right, if you missed anything, I got this up on the YouTube channel, my YouTube channel as well. Give me a follow at Nick Ashew on all of the social channels. It's Westwood One Sports.